everyone, Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make melodic Anjunadeep style house in the style of Lignate and Yotto. As usual, you can get the project file and samples and MIDI and presets, all of that stuff in this video in the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there, because it's already available. And yeah, let's get going. So this is the loop that you heard in the intro. We're at 123 BPM, a little bit slower, a little bit deeper, and the first sound we have here is the lead, which sounds like this. So here's the MIDI for the lead. You can see it's pretty simple. It's basically just based around 3 notes here. You can see we go D, and then F, and then A. So it's actually just walking up a D minor chord, and then here it switches to G as the last note, just to kind of make it a little bit more dynamic, because what's happening here is we have this like kind of hypnotic pattern, and then we get into this part. And like I said, I think it just makes it a little bit more dynamic if you switch the note there. Instead of, just having everything play the exact same thing the whole way through. For the sound on this one, it's made using analog. What we have here is, you can see we have a saw wave and a square wave. On the square wave, I have the pulse width up a little bit, and then those are going into a low pass. And you can see low pass filter is set like this. We have a bit of an envelope on it. I also have it key tracked. So the way key tracking works is essentially, if you think about it like pitch, when you play like a low note, it plays a low note, and when you play a high note, it plays a high note. Same deal, except with the filter frequency. So basically, if you play a lower note, you can see the filter's more closed, and then the higher you go, the more open it is. And so this works really well when you have a really dynamic sort of lead like this. Like I was saying, this is kind of bouncing around this one chord. So it's kind of cool, because this way each note is at a slightly different space with the filter. After that, I've got the amp envelope set like this. Then we just have a bit of vibrato and a bit of unison, and that is it for inside the synth. After that, I have a bit of echo as well as a bit of reverb. These are both giving the sound space. You can see I've got the echo on dotted 8 notes, and then we have it on the ping pong setting. That's how you get it to sound really big. And this also helps with the overall mix, because this way we have everything kind of more down the center. But then this one, you're hearing those repeats in the left and right ear, and it kind of makes it stand out, and it helps to keep it from getting like buried in the mix, as can be an issue sometimes with plucks like this. And yeah, and then the reverb is just set like that. After that, we have a drum bus, just fattening the sound up. I'll show you. This is very important. For this kind of a pluck, if you want it to really be like powerful in the mix, here's without this. You can hear the sound is there, but it's a bit thin. But then adding this really gives us that fullness that we need. Then after that, we have a high-pass filter, just cutting out some low end, and then I have a compressor, side-chaining it to the cake, and then the last thing here is this EQ8. And the reason for this is because if I turn off this point, notice how the loudest part is like right around there? I was trying to get rid of that. So it's just cutting out a bit of that mud and making a bit of room in the mix. And yeah, that is it for the lead. After that, we have the pad, which sounds like this. So here are the notes for this one. This is just kind of droning on this one chord. What it's doing is it's actually playing an A sharp major chord. So what we have here is, you can see we have A sharp, and then we have the 5th of A sharp, which is F. We have another A sharp. We have a major 3rd, D. We have F again. We have an A. So that is actually a major 7th. And then we have another D up here. And then we have another F. So it's just kind of like playing with notes that are inside of this scale. Again, we're just starting with a solid A sharp. And then the 5th F. And then we just add notes on top of that to kind of give it flavor. And this is really important in the mix. This is one of those things you actually may not always hear, but it really makes a difference. Like if I turn this off, and then I'll turn it on, you hear how much more full the mix sounds with it, especially like in the mid-range and the low mid-range and stuff. This is why you need something like this. Like, again, it's one of those things where if you're just making a track, you may not always notice it, but then if you don't have it, you definitely will notice it when you compare it to other tracks. For the sound on this one, it's made using wavetables. So I've got just a square wave, and then we have a saw wave, an octave up. It's going into a low pass. The low pass is being automated just to kind of give the sound some movement, makes it so that it's not just the same thing the whole way through, especially when it's already just playing this one chord the whole way through. Then after that, I have the amp envelope set like this, and then the last thing here is just the unison, which you can see is on the shimmer setting. I've got the voices at 3, the amounts at 30%. And yeah, then after that, we just have a bit of chorus to give the sound some space. Then I have a sidechain to the kick. You can hear that, pretty essential when you have all these layers to make them all kind of fit in together. And then the last thing on there is a high-pass filter cutting out the low end. And that is it for the pad. After that, we have the string, which sounds like this. So what this is playing is actually A and then C. So we're actually playing an A minor chord. And you can hear this creates some kind of cool musical stuff with the pad, because the pad is playing actually an A sharp major, but then this A minor still fits underneath that. Musically, it doesn't feel like it's clashing. But then it's just kind of adding something extra, and then when you couple that in with the bass line, you can hear it really creates some magic that I don't think is there with just the pad and the bass. So yeah, this is kind of like playing off of the other pad, and it's also just adding a bit of high end. Like if you notice, this pad, it's more mid-rangey. And then we add the string in, and it's just adding in that sharpness. And you can hear if I turn that off, it's actually kind of missing from the mix. So yeah, it's all about adding layers like this where it's doing something different, and it's adding something to the mix, and it's not just filling out the pad more. So for the sound on this one, it's made using the string sample. What happened here is, I had this sample, and then I just brought it into a simpler here, and then you can see I used the loop, and then I used the fade. So the secret to the fade is the start and the length, because if we turn those back to the default, and then I start to turn up the fade, you can see nothing happens. But if we start to turn down the length, and then we turn up the start time, now you can see it starts fading. And with the fade, what you get is you get like a perfect loop. So you can hear without it, if I just turn the fade off, and we'll make this a bit shorter. You hear that little like every time it's restarting? That's what we're trying to avoid. So the fade makes it so that it'll be an endless loop now. And you can see it works a lot smoother this way. After that, I just have a compressor sidechaining into the kick, and then a high-pass filter cutting out the low end. And that is it for the string. After that, we have the bass, which sounds like this. So you can see the bass is this pretty simple progression. It's starting on A sharp, and then it goes D, and then C. So sort of like almost a poppy chord progression, it's very kind of melodic and simple, and it feels kind of happy while there's still some melancholic stuff happening over top of it. With the other synths. So that's how I try to write my bass lines. I try to sort of set the foundation, and then the other synths on top are telling you where that's gonna go. So yeah, and then for the sound on this one, it's made using 2 layers and an instrument rack here. You can see the first one is just the sub. So this is just operator. I've got a sine wave and then another sine wave, just adding a little bit of FM on top of that. And then I have those low pass, not actually to cut out a lot of high end, but it's because with sine waves, a lot of times, you'll notice if you go from a low note to a high note, sometimes the high notes will be a little bit louder. So I like to just low pass it. And now the low notes and the high notes are even, and it's a lot more just focused in the sub frequencies. The second layer is made using analog. It sounds like this. So this is meant to be more like a respace type of sound. What we have here is you can see 2 saw waves. I got them detuned a little bit. And then those are going into a low pass, which is just set there. You can see I've got the frequency automating of the filter. And you'll also notice that the frequency automation is kind of like happening off of what the pad is doing. So you can see when the pad opens, the bass closes. And then when the pad closes, the bass opens. So it's kind of like, again, making the track more dynamic and making things kind of fit in with each other. If we had the bass and the pad opening at the same time, it would feel a little bit weird. Like you wouldn't really notice either one of them. It would just sound like the overall thing is breathing a lot more. But this way, it kind of keeps everything, playing off of each other nicely. And yeah, then we just got the amp envelope set like that. And then I have that being high pass so that we can have the sub, focus on the sub frequencies. And yeah, and then on both of those basses, you can see I just have a bit of drum bus to glue them together. There's without that. And with it, you can hear it makes them a lot fatter and again, really glues these together. And then we just have a compressor side chaining them to the kick. And that is it for the bass. After that, I have the kick, which sounds like this. So you can hear pretty simple stuff, with this, it's more about the type of kick that you're looking for, just like a very fat and punchy, deep, low end heavy kick like this. And if you want this one, links in the description. But yeah, like I said, there's a very fat and punchy, bassy kick. And then I've just got that going through a bit of drum bus, which you can see is just kind of beefing it up. And yeah, and then I have the kick and the bass in a group together to really make the low end tight and powerful. This is a technique I like to use a lot. You guys have seen this in a lot of my videos. But it's because it's really the best way to make your kick and bass, like I said, as fat as they can possibly be and as full as they can possibly be together. This is really going to glue these together and make everything feel more like kind of one low end as opposed to like a kick and a bass. So here's what it sounds like without the processing. And then with it. You can hear it's gluing everything together, and then it's just making it a lot fatter and more full. And just overall better sounding. So you can see we have a bit of drum bus, got that on the medium setting, got the drive and crunch up, and then I also have the transients up a little bit, which is making that kick kind of punch through a little bit more, and sort of compressing these together a little bit. And then the EQ8, I just have a low end boost just because when I was comparing this to some references, I noticed it still needed a little bit of a push. And yeah, the low end's really important with this sound. You really need to get that power and that fullness in the low end to really make the style work. And yeah, that is it for the low end. After that, we have the percussion, which sounds like this. So you can see we have this hi-hat just playing on the upbeats. Just got a bit of a high-pass filter on that. Just like a very sharp, hard-hitting, mid-rangey hi-hat. Then we have this shaker loop as well as a program shaker. So what's going on here is you can hear the shaker loop. It's kind of giving us like a and then the program shaker is like underneath that. And when you combine them together, you get this very full and fat sound kind of shaker. And you can hear if we just use one or the other on its own. It's just not quite as nice as having both. Yeah, it's all about layering things together to kind of get the best of both worlds. And yeah, there's the shaker. There's the shaker loop. And then the last thing here is the clap, which sounds like this. So this one's more about the type of sound you choose. In this case, I just chose one of my samples, which was just this very fat, hard-hitting, mid-rangey, punchy clap. You just want something that's very punchy and that's going to sit really well on top of the kick. You don't want it to get buried under the kick, so it needs to have that to it. Then I have all the percussion in a group, so you can see we just have a bit of stuff on here. I've got a drum bus. There's without that. And then with it, so you can hear how that makes the percussion and the shakers and the hi-hats a lot fatter and more full. You don't want your shakers and your hi-hats to just be like tss. You also need some in there too. And this really helps to bring that out. And then after that, I just have an auto filter cutting out the low end, and then an EQ8 boosting the high end. So yeah, just cutting out some low end, bringing out a little bit more sharp high end. Again, it's just like with the low end, it's you just really need that strong, sharp high end, and then strong low end with the kick and bass. And yeah, that is it for the percussion. that is also going to be it for this video, guys. So, I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project file and samples and MIDI and presets, all of that stuff in this video in the description. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because it's already available. Thank you so much, guys, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.